Today's headlines: Gen.G macro, Oner is very lonely, Duro's blitzcrank, and T1's game 5 drafting. Let's hop into it. In game number 1, after T1 was very far ahead in the game, there was this brilliant moment from Gen.G with a completely mind game T1. It was ahead of the Soul Dragon, and I do think that T1 could have simplified, but they insisted on finding a fight because they were 3 items on Orianna, 3 items on Ambessa. In their mind, they were like, we are not gonna let the enemy trade an objective with us. We're going to force on them no matter what. So in this moment here, Keen is going to be hovering around bottom side. Drake is going to spawn. And right now, they are spotting Ambessa hitting it. And their reaction is that they're going to start hitting the objective, forcing T1 to kind of react. And in this moment, as T1 is going to enter this area, they still don't know where Keen is. Keep in mind, they have no information on Keen. He's just doing casually red. Even though, with this red buff announcement, this should be a tell for T1. That Keen is now on bottom side, and he could potentially do Drake while T1 is committing all the way. But T1 in this scenario are going to cross it over into the Nash area, and they're not going to take over the leash here. They had full information on the fact that Camille was on red because of the announcement and seeing that everybody on the enemy team got red. They still don't take over, and they feel kind of uncomfortable about the fact that Canyon is kind of behind them. So they scour into this area and push Gen.G out, but this takes a lot of time. In this moment, another blue trinket is dropped, which is the second one strategically placed to see if the enemy is actually leashing this or not. And in this moment, because they spotted Ambessa cross, Keen just starts hammering away at the dragon. And now with Cannon being spotted and him using the plan, T1 want to make sure that he's pushed out from their own jungle, and T1 don't pull the trigger in this moment where they are so much stronger. There were many things that T1 could have optimized in this moment, but it was also kind of cool how Gen.G created a new play in the moment. I do think if T1 just took over the Nash there and they forced and used the information of the Camille, this could have ended up a lot better for them. So they really dropped the ball here. In the following sequence, T1 are going to hard force Nasher as a reaction to Camille doing this play. They can almost assume that either Galio is going bot or Vi is going bot, even though they don't have, of course, the information, the visual on their own minimap. In this moment, it is Vi that is indeed collapsing, and Doran is just kiting away. If he felt safe under that tower in the 1v1, obviously he would stay, but Keen chases all the way, and T1 just force Nasher. This should have been a solid trade. T1 can easily just walk away after doing this objective. There's a slight punish here because Faker does a crazy TP. He does have a tankier build, but this is of course one of the methods that Faker likes to utilize. Is he builds tanky on of course champions like Orianna, and then he invites the engage of the enemy. And in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. They are between turrets, and it gives T1 of course a fight. The tricky thing about the situation for T1 though is of course they are 4v5, so I don't know how intentional the read is, because in the end they lose a lot of good guys and a lot of Nashers. Finally, to really destroy the game for T1, in most cases, if you ever find yourself in this setup here, where you're committing all the way, with such a small wave, if you have Nash and you don't take this mid wave right now that Chovy is on, you're either going to recall or commit into the tier 2. And considering the position here and the information that they have and how blind, of course, T1 is in some of these pockets, and the fact that they're going to lose the mid-wave, T1 find themselves very out of position. And keep in mind, they don't have Nash recall on everybody due to what happened before, which makes the situation very bad for T1. In no shape or form should they commit all the way, and they should have kept someone on the mid-wave. They should have had Doran ready. I have no idea why Doran commits, because they can easily, of course, kite and tether to this cannon. Because the engage of blue side, of course, if they're going to cross insane distances to fight, it is going to be a lot more awkward for you now to fight. They can bait it out with, for example, the Orianna again, and then they can TP. But if Ambessa's already here, and then she starts to recall, and then they begin the siege, and Galio is the one collapsing on them, and Vi is kind of wrapping around, this becomes a lot more awkward. Because they didn't get the mid wave, and Ambessa doesn't have pressure here. With the wave, and she has no Nasher, it means that the collapse on both sides becomes so much easier. Now Galio is wrapping around, Vi is wrapping around, and T1 are just sieging here with the 2 cannon minions. Gumyushi being the one with Nasher. They're trying to make sure that they break this tier 2. But T1 has been in line of sight, in vision now, for a solid minute, which makes this engage so easy to plan and so easy to set up, you know, the ideal circumstances for GenG to, of course, fight. Faker doesn't get the hourglass off. Ambessa goes deep, while Keen is just buying time with his GA and Chovy, of course. And with this ace, the game is over. T1 had a beautiful early game, but there were sequences here where T1, in the macro department, got completely outplayed, and in some ways also outplayed themselves. A flaw perhaps in GenG's prep work was, of course, the T1 Oner level 3 gank. Level 3 ganks is something that we see globally from almost every jungler as they cross. It's kind of like a very, very cheap time investment at a very, very good timer, as both, you know, solo lanes are contesting for level 3, and there's a bot lane contestation. This is something that Oner did to, of course, get T1's bot lane ahead. The main adjustment that we saw from, of course, the in-season play till, of course, the playoffs, T1 definitely adjusted how they incorporate their jungle into pressuring early bot lanes. This, of course, is a situation here where Ruler gets frozen on, and Javan is just getting that free kill on Leona is a really, really big deal. This, of course, extends to the Rise TP that is also made. There's a ward behind them, and Gumyushi stays behind. And then Faker here just sacks minions because Canyon is committing all the way to pressure him off the tower, which of course is very painful. But Faker is, of course, very giving. He just TPs behind the enemy bot lane, and as they commit, Ruler has nowhere to go. Faker doesn't even get an assist, but you can very, very clearly see that T1's game plan is, if we can pressure into bot and we can find angles to get our bot lane ahead, Keria then gets enabled to dominate the map. And then, of course, Gumyushi, when he's ahead, he tends to stay ahead because he's a very, very consistent and disciplined player. Later on in the game, you can see some of the flaws of Canyon's current form. Canyon's someone that is getting criticized a lot, and I think rightfully so. I think he's been playing some of the worst series in his career, considering the standard that he set for himself. Just the timing of when he does objectives and when he doesn't do objectives is just kind of awkward. He's kind of just doing his own thing, and that is part of the GenG gameplay pattern, where they are so good in isolation that if the enemy uses resources to shut you down or to gank you, the amount of resources that takes is already a lot because of how disciplined and clean they are playing around information. But the additional layer is that all the other players are ready to pounce and to leverage that extra depth. But with Canyon, he seems kind of flimsical in the way he plays, and very predictable in the way he plays. Because Oner now on the crossing, he put this Drake ward because he knows that he's going to be crossing into top side in preparation for the grubs and also in preparation for his bot lane. Faker, even though he TP'd bot and is behind on CS, can still find prio on his rise, and it's very, very clear that T1 is in tune with the game idea, while GenG are, of course, playing in isolation, playing very, very solo-oriented gameplay most of the time. The Q doesn't land on Doran and he gets away, he gets extra healing, and then here he pulls the dragon. But in reality here, with the ward on Drake and his camps being alive on bottom side, you can see that the preparation from T1 side is just a lot more cleaner and a lot better. T1 stacked the wave in, the Rise ult comes through even though Annie tries to chase him out. He flashes after Faker, so he does his job of goalkeeping Faker away. But of course they get the kill with Oner's collapse, and this is a snowball from what happens before. They get the Drake announcement, but at what cost? The bot lane is now completely out of the game. Game number 3 is probably the best game I've seen from T1 in this entire month, where the lane matchups were very honest. The Civic Karma, Keria got to play a range support, which is something we don't see that much of anymore. Of course, Nico and Bar are kind of outliers because they have engage in playmaking. Karma is a little bit different. Wukong as well, not an early game stomping jungler, which is cool. We also saw Doran do a lot of good things in lane phase. He burned Keen's flash. We also saw Faker doing his roam plays where he drops away where Chovy is choving, and Faker gets a play in to, of course, get his side laners ahead, which is a nice return to form. I thought this was one of the best games that T1 played in recent times. The moment Oner finishes Trinity Force, you can see that he's ready to actively pressure. They spotted Nico on bottom side, and because Sivir can kill the neutral wave very freely, they know about Zaya's base timer. I like how they cut inside and try to get vision information for, of course, Doran so he doesn't get ganked. Canyon face checks into a Sivir and of course a Wukong and dies. I like the fact that T1 is flexible with how many numbers they're playing with and with what information they're playing with, because they know Nico and Zaya's not going to be on time. And Canyon is not aware of this. He assumes that nobody's going to be there because of the Karma base. So this is a very nice cut through, and Oner gets the kill ahead of course, the Rift Herald. We are back at it again with other guns. Can you guys spot the problem? It's always the same. It's always the same. The entry point, once again, if the Atakan is in the middle, it's so easy for teams to just swarm you. Jax, like Wukong already has a very, very good position here from this flank together with Jax. They can undermine this pocket, they can undermine through this pocket as well. And it's so easy to swarm, and Ruler will have no space to play with. If you pull this out, all of a sudden, there's only 2 angles of attack. And then you can set up in a way where you create the flank on people that are trying to cross, of course, into the objective. So GenG do the same old, T1 here, Oner, of course, decides to clutch it up. They find the engage, they Kai back off of the Pantheon E, and of course they deny the Duro entrance. And Oner is alone on the objective, gets a smite as Canyon kind of lost the plot and is fighting elsewhere. Wukong falls, but the fight is pretty much won. And then a little beautiful cheeky mechanic here from Doran. Activates E as the Pantheon jump goes through, and then he jumps on a pink ward to get the damage through from a Z. Because of course the Pantheon E just works on forward directed damage. This game concludes off of a very, very nice combo from Faker. He finds and isolates Chovy behind the wall, is hiding in Fog of War this entire time. Of course, Gen.G still don't know where he is. Chovy is looking to squeeze one auto, and he gets captured. He tries to get out of the hitbox of W with the W move speed. But here, of course, the combo goes through. Wukong ults him, and then Wukong ults again. And the beauty there of the second Wukong ult is that, of course, it lines up perfectly with the hourglass falling off. So Faker, seems like when he's playing those champions that have global ultimates, he does best, whether it's Ryze, Talia, and when he can get his teammates ahead. This was, once again, I repeat, the best T1 game I've seen in a long time. Oner got to farm, and when he got to that point where he had Trinity Force, he took over the game completely. In game number 4, we see the continuation of the same idea from T1. Chovy picking Cassiopeia for the first time ever in his career, which is very, very unique. I didn't think it was a super strong Cassio game, but it is good against Sylas and Rek'Sai. I can give him that. To Fate, of course, a champion that will get opportunities to roam and to impact. I also like the Rek'Sai lock-in, usually a European top lane pick. Duran doing his absolute best to dribble, and the same thing for, of course, Keen. They're playing 2 champions with a lot of dashes, but in the end they will both meet their demise. But I do think that Duran played it as good as he could, and Keen the same way for that matter. The big flaw for T1 in this game, after the dive that we just saw from both sides, is the fact that you have Keen here slow pushing out against the Varus, and you have Rek'Sai here slow pushing out against, of course, the Blitzcrank and the Kalista that are opening on the map. And in this moment, we're going to have this scenario where Rek'Sai is going to create a situation where Kalista gets a freeze, and here Varus thins out the wave for no reason at all. So this wave, of course, is coming towards Varus, and he just decides to hard push it, which makes the wave bounce. And the moment this wave bounces, you need to create a scenario where you dive the Cassandra, and that of course isn't super easy, because in the previous dive Keen lost a lot of HP because he was taking XP. But instead Doran is now in a position where he's frozen. Keen is going to have this wave coming towards him. They crash it before Sylas can even be anywhere close, and Keen is getting a lot of XP while Rek'Sai is getting completely like just zoned. Doran dodges the hook there, Duro doesn't land it, and Canyon is going to come through. And you can see here the situation that T1 get a dragon while Cassandra gets full XP and, of course, just full gold even. And now they're finally going to loop through. They're going to latch on to Doran. We have that knock up into the tunnel, and then Duro gets a hook on, of course, the Rek'Sai that is tunneling through. You can call bullshit on the hitbox, but you know, if it's bullshit enough times, then at some point we need to accept that it's a part of the game. And that's just how it is. And as you can see here, Keen in no danger to get dove. He gets 6. And a massive blunder here in terms of how they managed the wave in bot lane. Because here, Gumayusi easily could have froze the lane. And then he could have also even lane against the K'Sante 1v1 and pushed him out. Because K'Sante's not going to walk on the wave. And the Berserker Greaves Varus is going to just completely stomp him in the 1v1. He's never going to pressure aggressively either because he doesn't know where the Sylas and of course the Renata is. And that allows you to be flexible. Maybe you base while Varus freezes and then you open on top side. And then maybe you set up a play with the TF with your 4-man fighting on top side against the 3. You have so many more options. But the fact that T1's bot lane decided to push that out puts Keen in a massive advantage. And as you can see, Rek'Sai was doomed to fail because of the wave bouncing. Here we had Faker trying to pull out the Houdini moment, but it's not as impressive when you are porting into the enemy and not out of the enemy. Not so sure what Faker was thinking here. I think he just wanted to start a fight because of Kallista's position that was revealed because of the Destiny. But Cassiopeia is in a dream situation like this. Faker gets queued, Skarner ulted. And of course T1, the other players need to dodge the tools that are being thrown there, whether it's Skarner ult or Cassie ult, and T1 lose the game completely. The rest of the game is pretty much just a montage of beautiful hooks that Duro lands, and there is not much more to it. Duro lands a hook on Gumayusi, Duro lands a hook here on mid lane as well. This is just hook after hook from Duro. For me, I think he was a clear MVP for this game in particular. Gets a hook in there on Renata. Has so many beautiful hooks that he just plain and simple lands. This hook is absolutely ridiculous as well. Look at that. Boom. Long arm of the law. Grabs Faker. Just fantastic gameplay from Duro. But I have to say the mismanagement on the swap was probably the biggest problem that T1 faced in this game. And they didn't really get started because Rek'Sai was just completely pushed out of the game. And then Duro just being a hook goat. Plain and simple. I guess it's a good moment as well to highlight the swap that we see. It's pretty straightforward. You basically send your AD into top lane, you lane as top lane and support bot lane until you're ready to base, and then you go top lane in time for 3 minutes because that's when the anti-lane swap shield goes off. This is very useful when your ADC lane matchup is too bad against the enemy. A lot of ADCs lane super well into top laners, whether it's Lucian, Varus or Kalista. They are so strong 1v1 laners, so they can win against most top laners that are bruisers or whatever in the early levels. Their weakness in the lane is, of course, they get ganked, but at that point, you're going to have your Skarner there, and then, of course, you're going to have your Blitzcrank there. So, as you can see here, this is a good way of dodging tough matchups, and this is something that we saw the first time from WE in competitive play when they dodged a very difficult lane matchup for Yunara and sent Shen into bot lane. As you can see here, Duro is going to eventually recall and then walk into top lane. And at this point in time, the lane swap shield is already gone and there is no issue at minute 3. And there you go. Finally, I just wanted to take a look at Game 5 draft. T1, of course, in drafting Game 5s, they often fall into holes, partially because of their biggest strength, which is also their biggest weakness, is that they lean into comfort a lot. And them being comfortable at the champions that they do play makes them very competitive against the best team in the world in Gen.G, for example. But it also means that when they are in Game 5s and 40 champions out of the pool, it means that, of course, they are going to be landing on champions that don't necessarily synergize well together. Because if you have players that are role players on the team, obviously the amount of champions you're going to be effective on in the context of meeting up against the Gen.D is going to be, very limited. While Gen.G's biggest strength and feel is that they have such a big depth. They can play engage on every role. They can play, of course, carry on every role, and that's what makes them dangerous. While T1, you kind of want something in mid lane that roams and can play in isolation. You want a ADC that, of course, it thrives on being left alone on the mid wave. You want playmakers and, of course, jungle and support. And on Doran, you kind of want something bulky, something that can scale into the game, like a Jackson and Bessa. And eventually you're going to run out of champions like this, and you're going to end up in scenarios that are kind of awkward. Because even though, you might have an issue with some of the champions that they've picked, there's things that you can do they could have done better in the prep work, because Gen.G won on that too. You can't blame it all on, of course, only comfort. So let's break it down role for role and what some of the things that I believe T1 could have done better in this draft. So the Ziggs first pick. I think T1 don't know how to play with Ziggs. Ziggs is something that needs to have enough support that he can push and actively play. He needs to have space to poke in team fights, and he, in both of these games that T1 have played Ziggs, they haven't given him that. He is locking Ziggs, it seems, because How Life played it against him and they lost against it. GenG played it, D+ played it, these three teams played it against T1 and they lost, and they seem to lean into it for that reason. Another issue with Ziggs here is the fact that you have to pair it together with AD mids. Sure, you can play something like Vega Ziggs, is something we've seen from D+, for example, but it's a little bit weaker. And at the same time, you know, AD mids is something that Faker is very bad at. It's probably like his weakest champions, if anything. Additionally, Ziggs in a super pool that has Rakan open, the only champion that you can necessarily pick into Rakan is Nautilus, and even then, Rakan is going to have free level 6. With the super pool being gone, in Blitzcrank gone, Nico gone, Leona gone, and of course Braum gone, and Renata, Kama, Alistar, and Poppy, all of these supers gone, Rakan is insanely broken. The only answer into Rakan is the ranged supports. And the day we see Ziggs Lulu bot lane is the day, of course, pigs fly. But we've seen MF Lulu, so why not? It's just that if you lock in Ziggs and you have no intention of putting it mid lane, you're going to run into some problems. If you picked Ziggs because you wanted to potentially let Faker play it in the game at 5, and then you drop a counter into the Rakan because the enemy showed, and you want to play Aphelios Trash after picking the Ziggs away because the Ziggs is a good answer into Aphelios Trash, then I would subscribe to that. You know, if you want to pick like Lucian Nami, Lucian Milio into, of course, the Rakan, I would agree with that way more. But after they pick Ziggs, they slam, of course, the Jace and the Maokai, signaling even harder that their intention is to, of course, send the Ziggs into bot lane. Additionally, just highlighting the bans, you see the Azir Bard bans have been staple bans against T1, which are very, very strong against them. Goes without saying. And of course, T1, they ban Smolder partially because Ruler plays it, but also because Chovy plays it. And I do think if, of course, Gen.G took Jace away, they would have picked Yon in the 2-3 instead to pair together with the Ziggs. And then the Smolder is, of course, an answer into Yon that Chovy is a master of, so removing that makes sense. And then in the 4-5, they remove Zeri, leaving Lucian open. There's another detail, right? If you think about bot lane, is that in my mind, if I wanted a game 5 and I wanted to put Gumayushi on something, I want him to play Lucian if he has to blind, and then I want him to play Aphelios slash, of course, Jinx if it comes down to it. I don't want him to play Ziggs in a deciding game. Like, that's not something that I want to see at all, which in my mind is just terrible prep work. As a follow-up, in terms of the reaction to, of course, Ornn and Rakan, already the enemy picked the strongest engage tools in the game available, right? They basically set them up to engage. So there's no reason to just commit into this poke identity after you locked in Ziggs. At least Ziggs has some self-peel with his W, but locking in Jace here, sure, he picked Jace and he clutched out a game 5 against CFO because he dominated lane against Ornn, but with the new lane swap strategies, with, of course, the proficiency of Ornn for Keen, picking Jace like this is just silly. I don't understand why they don't go for example, Yorick. Yorick is something that can completely cannibalize Ornn on side and do a good job. It's also something that he plays. Yorick was available, and I think they could have played a game where Ziggs can wave clear on mid wave. They can play a side lane heavy game, and they don't need to invite, of course, Gen.G into this scenario where they can just pick a dream team fight comp and you just pick champions that are all weak into that composition. And then we have the Maokai lock-in. Obviously, I think when we all saw this, considering Oner's form, we didn't expect them to, of course, send Oner on Maokai. This was an answer into Rakan. In my opinion, I do think Nautilus is just the better support because it gives you, a little bit more resistance against the potential ADs that the enemy picks, more potential resistance against some of the mid laners they might pick, and already Ornn can easily block it with his W, which makes Maokai, of course, a lot worse. And at the same time, Maokai has no initiative, no pressure in lane at all, so we really don't like that for, of course, Keria. Very simple, Nocturne lock-in. The enemy, picked this composition that is very fragile, so just committing to more engage together with Nocturne and Rakan makes a lot of sense. And then in the 4-5, all they need is an ADC with a dash, because that's what's good into Ziggs. Ezreal works. They decided to ban Zeri, which is a ruler classic, which I understand. But the fact that Lucian just gets locked in, I think if anything, is just a spit in the face of Gumayushi, because he would rather want to play this champion in this game. And then finally, when you lock in the Yone and you don't pivot to Jace into mid, Jace mid, Maokai jungle was an angle. Here you send Jace because, of course, it is Doran's comfort. So this Jace was designed for Doran in the first place. They lock in the Yone and they pick Lilia. The issue with this composition is that they have zero frontline. They are very squishy, and that makes it for a prime Vex spot. Vex is not a champion that we see that often, but if you have a lot of CC on your team, you have Nocturne, that is super happy if you have additional fears because he has more move speed against targets that are feared. That's a good synergy. Vex as well has a lot of CC here to line up her ultimate, and at the same time, there's not a single champion here on this team that is, you know, bad to ult. Everyone is squishy, everyone is one-shottable, and GenG's composition is 10 times better here in the final game. And I think prep work is a really big deal, and I think champion pool depth is also a really big deal, but I'm really disappointed by T1's prep work here because, you know, this is just plain and simple, just terrible drafting in my opinion. GenG, it's as if like they locked in Rakan, Ornn, because very flexible champs that can scale into the game, and you can kind of expand into many different directions with Ornn and Rakan, which is nice, especially after the Ziggs lock-in, and you have no fear of a range support. And then T1 just decide to make this Oner Rakan as strong as humanly possible in the draft. So let me know what you guys think. That's the end of this breakdown. Let me know what you guys want as the follow-up videos and the follow-up, kind of angles that we drop on the channel. I'm gonna make sure that I upload at least one video a day. If you guys like this type of content, please like, subscribe, and comment. And I will make sure to read it and, of course, answer if it fits. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.